taken place with the US Coast Guard saying that they're proud to own the sea, and the United States having seized this Russian-flagged oil tanker in North Atlantic following dramatic week-long chase on the high seas. As the operation to seize the sanctioned vessel, which changed its name from Bella 1 to Marinera, was fleeing the American blockade, according to the authorities there, and was the announcement that has now come in on part of the US of this seizure. That has now come in at this time where the US believes that their ship's efforts was to evade the authorities, and it was followed in real time by the fleet of observers and analysts. And this is now becoming the new flashpoint between Washington and Moscow that has threatened to undermine Trump administration blockade of the Latin American country in the wake of its stunning attack and capture of the Venezuelan president. Let's connect with Srinjoy on this. Srinjoy, good morning. Will it be a new flashpoint that we're looking at with the US Coast Guard now seizing a Russian tanker?
Yes, while there's no nuclear issue involved, this is very reminiscent of what happened in 1962. Here is a blockade, a Latin American country involved, and the Americans and the Russians involved. This is a slightly damper version of the Cuban Missile Crisis when the world nearly got to World War III. But in this case, this is a Russian tanker, the Bella 1, that had slipped through a blockade of the American Navy and the American Coast Guard of Venezuela, carrying Venezuelan oil and moving towards the North Atlantic. And that's where it was intercepted, and it has been held by the Americans. Now Russia is very cross, and the Russians have sent their weapons, ships and weapon systems like submarines and so on towards the North Atlantic, is what we are hearing. The point is that this has the potential of creating a major crisis. Whether this happens or not, we don't know. But at this point, just imagine, here is a Russian tanker slipping through a blockade of the American Navy and Coast Guard, chased into the North Atlantic, where the Americans find it and seize it. Russia, being very angry about it, has sent naval vessels across. So we have to see what happens. But the whole point is that this has the potential of causing much commotion in the world. Where this heads, we do not know. Where this will end,
well, we'll talk about the Russian reaction, as you just mentioned, Srinjoy, because after US has seized Russia's oil tanker, Russia is saying that they are monitoring the move, and Moscow has now called this seizure to be as illegal and violating the law of the sea. That the Russian lawmaker, in fact, has gone ahead to even call it as an attempt of piracy, saying that Moscow is closely monitoring the situation, and the Russian Transport Ministry is saying that the actions of the American side violate the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, and no state can use force against vessels duly registered in jurisdictions of other states. Well, the Kremlin there, Srinjoy, as you said, a strong supporter of the deposed President Nicolas Maduro, has now been accusing the US of violating maritime law by the seizure of their tanker.
Yes, undoubtedly. The Russians are very cross about this, and they are making it very clear that they also have something to say and something to do. Now, what the Russians will do, how they will do these things, we will have to see what they can do or what they will do. But at this point, things are difficult as they are, with the Russia-Ukraine war raging for now almost 4 years. Now, while all that is happening, you see confrontation between the Russians and the Americans. Now, this naturally raises the stakes, raises temperatures, and how does one sort this out? Because this was very deliberately done. Let's not forget, here is a blockade. much like the of Cuba in 1962.
Yes.
A blockade where this is stopping Venezuelan oil from going out. In that case, in 62, it was of Russian weaponry, nuclear weaponry coming into
the Russian
Cuba.
side saying that
But
they've
here-
taken into account the information coming in of the Russian citizens among the crew, and they have been demanding that the American side ensure humane and dignified treatment of them, strictly respect their rights and interests, and not hinder when it comes to their speedy return to their homeland. But that seems to be as far as escalating tensions there, and this is being reported in the high seas as far as the U.S. seizure of the Russian oil tanker is here concerned. But please do stay on with us.